people into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
You human trafficker.
Honorable
You understand.
They are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
the best way to predict the future is to create it, and that's a quote by Peter Drucker. Time is precious, time is money, and this is a time for Money Talk on Atlantic Television Network. Good day, viewers, and welcome to a fresh episode of ATN Business on Atlantic Television Network, right here in the city of Port Harcourt. This is a network's medium of bringing the happenings in the economic sector of the society to our discerning viewers. This program is aimed at bringing to the doorstep of viewers the business, financial, and economic activities from all strata of society. Its delivery is accentuated tax reform bill. What does the governor's shift in stance mean? In Labour, Guinness appoints Bakari as Marketing Innovations Director. We are open for advert placements, bookings, and commercials. You can connect with us on all our ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network, or on X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website, www.atlanticnetwork.tv. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll get right into the conversation. Don't go anywhere.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
You human trafficker.
Honorable
You understand.
They are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule mentioned that if they had been informed earlier about the proposed 60% VAT distribution model for better equity, their opposition might have been less intense. The reform, which aims to address VAT imbalances and multiple taxation, now exempts vulnerable Nigerians from personal income tax, shifting the burden to higher earners. Clarifications provided during the town hall by Taiwo Oyodele, chairman policy, emphasized that the new VAT model would allocate 60% based on supply and consumption, promoting fairness. Concerns about dissolving agencies like Naseni and Tetfund were dismissed. Supporters, including former Speaker Yakubu Dogara, have praised the reforms for the potential to increase revenues, especially in the north, through sectors like livestock and minerals. The discussion has suggested the governors may reconsider the oppositions in light of this clarification. What's your take on this story, Mr. Benson?
Well, of the people, that is the broader need for tax. Now we are talking about tax reform. I think the elements around the tax reform, they are not too clear because we are just looking at the small segments. We have not seen a broader document that is showing the various phases and how it works, because they are talking about base consumption, supply, and consumption in the resident place. We end at 60% VAT. But if you look at supply and consumption, there are two different things, because you can supply without having consumption taking place. And again, we must look at the bigger picture, because most often we have policy that will tell you certain amount of revenue will come out from those policies that will help them to govern well and meet up with the needs of the common man. But that hasn't been the case. We have a recent one around the subsidy thing. We don't know where the money from the subsidy, what is being used for at the moment. Now we are talking about tax reform. In as much as whatever the government comes up with that is in the right direction, we applaud it. But we want to know these policies that are coming up, how do they really translate? We can see and experience and feel as a people. So for me, the whole idea of the tax reform, it is not a bad one, but there are certain things that should come first before we start talking about tax reform. For example, if you look at the cost of governance, it's very high at the moment. They should be able to adjust cost aspect of the administration before you start talking about tax reform and some other things. I feel what the government of the day is trying to do is to come up with fast policy that will make people want to see them putting measures or working. But at the end of the day, how do they get accountability for these decisions that they are making? Because they are making too many decisions, and at the end of the day, we are not seeing these decisions translate into something that we, as the common citizens of this country, we feel. Because the hardship is still ongoing. We are complaining. People are not really happy with the way things are going. So you coming with tax reform and the elements that are involved in this tax reform, they are not clear. That is the reason why the governors in the first instance, they said they are not clear with the stance. They earlier, had a different position. Then now they are saying, okay, because of some clarification, they are now taking a different stance. But that shows that they have not even been able to clearly express to us what this reform is really all about, because it's more than just the surface that we see. What are the broader terms? What are the clauses that they are not made known to us now? Those are the things that we need to know. And when this reform comes on board, how much are we looking at that is going to revenue generate for the common man, and how we are going to use whatever is coming out from this tax and reform? Those are the things we need to know. Accountability, because that is where we are really concerned with at the moment. I think, Wendy, for now, that is all I would say.
Okay, thank you so much. During the town hall meeting, I think your delay made clear some of the tax reform, some of the things we have issues with, because from what you're saying, you're pointing out that there are some gray areas. The northern governors were agitating, and now they are saying that if they had known, or some of them said if they had known about the 60%. Now, the new tax reform is saying that 60% is given to derivative, not where it's remitted. So it's more like pay as you earn, or you receive. Tax reform be exempted from paying tax, and also tax will be removed, VAT will be removed from staple foods. Don't you think that's going to help unburden the governance, or at least make cost of living a lot better for Nigerians?
Yes, like I said, policy are good, when you look at them from the surface. But there are so many things that goes into policies. And one of the things I mentioned, and we keep saying this, is rates from this. There should be a projection from this tax reform. Where are you taking this revenue that you generate from this reform? Which area in our economy are you going to put back this money resources be about consumption. These are two different things. You can supply to a destination without having consumption in that destination. How do you account? And even when you say the state level, capturing the taxes in the state, do we have the appropriate means to do so? Because there's a lot more than when you talk about this reform. And that is where I'm trying to point at, that we need to know more. I'm not saying the reform is not going to be positive, but what I'm saying is Nigerians at this point in time wants to see the beginning and the end of whatever you are offering them. And that remains my stand.
Okay. So you asked that what aspects of the economy is going to be improved. I know that the tax reform...
More stakeholders that should be involved in this discussion, that will throw more light and give them more guidance to achieving a, optimal reform. But like I would tell you, we are talking about the tax reform. You just mentioned education sector, you mentioned health. But there are certain principal things that affect us in Nigeria. Like power is a sector that tends to affect the economic situation of things. We are looking at our roads are bad, and transport of goods and services is very important as well. Now, the railway is another aspect that can enhance commerce for us as a people. Utility, I will say this again, for people, is to even provide an employment opportunity for them. If those things are not reflected alongside the reform, you are doing something that's not complete. Because like I keep saying, you need to have a reform that is heading towards a destination. And that destination is going to give answers to the problems that be set aside for the project that you have just listed. But if you say the tax reform is going to be addressed, look at the money that is set aside for such areas. So this reform, this will take this period of time so that we can hold the government accountable. Because we have had governments that will come 8 years, they will give promises, they will tell us they are coming policy that will affect us, but we are not seeing results. And the result is what drives the common man. It's what makes life worthwhile for the common man. So that is my position, Windy.
Okay, so earlier you had said that some key players, some people that should be part of the reform are not part of it, some people that should study this document. Who are the people that you think have been neglected or isolated and not part of this reform system?
Okay, first, we are looking at the tax reform. And at the end of the day, the government agency that has discussed about the tax reform are more like the state governors and probably people within the government sector, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not seeing a situation where people in the private sector are well embraced in line of this whole reform discussion and all of that. And, some other thing that really strike my imagination, when things are going bad in our country, you hear of the NSC, they come on board and say they want to lay down tools and all of that. Is it that decisions like this, they are taking place in the absence of NSC having their input, so that we can say, tomorrow the reform don't come and they will say it's affecting workers? I don't know if you follow what I'm saying. Are they part of this discussion around this reform now? So that when the reform comes on board, they won't say, no, we disagree. Because if they are part of it at this point in time, there will be no basis for disagreement. And there are stakeholders like the people in the manufacturing sector, which is the private sector. Are they duly represented, or we are just using a few sample of people that will align with what we affect? Are they part of the process so that everybody is part of what we make it? It to say, are you saying what concerns the northern governors doesn't concern the people in the east or the south? So I think the government of the day should avoid making segments out of this discussion and try to come to a place where everybody is together and we are taking feedback from everybody and we are giving a more detailed and comprehensive response to what the issues are. Because now, if we start to go into the segments, maybe tomorrow, after we have been able to sort the northern governors, their position, then we'll start looking at, okay, the west governors will come up with their own arguments and stance, and we start looking at, why not come together? We are Nigeria, we are one. And these are things that, they are little things that we don't pay attention to, but they really spark as far as our unity is concerned. So let's speak at once. Let's not segment by saying the northern governors and the Eastern. Yes, though they have their concerns, but I think at the end of the day, we have to give a general, more comprehensive feedback that includes everybody, so nobody's there.
Okay. Well, the reason we have the northern lawmakers on the spotlight is because so far they are the only ones that have come up to make or to declare their stance on the tax reform. The other regional government or lawmakers are yet to say anything. And the northern lawmakers are saying that the tax reform is going to impoverish their region. That's why they have a challenge with that. So do you think that's a good bargain, or do you think their stance is actually right? You think the tax reform has the idea of impoverishing a particular region and enriching the others?
Fine. If their stand is to ensure their people are well protected and they are not exploited with the reform, then, of course, it's something they must stand by and defend their people. But as I say, as long as it's for the interest of their people, there's nothing wrong there. But again, if you look at the North, in most cases, they have artisans, in the North more than in the South. And most of these artisans, that is the area where I mentioned earlier that data capturing becomes a challenge. Because they are saying the trend show for the tax reform is about 1.5 million per annum. And some of these artisans, you see, they're more than 1.5 per annum. So how do you capture them data-wise so that you can apply the tax reform to them? And these are the areas where you continuously see variance, and you always put things in a light that you are not clear enough to say you want to stand firm and say, yes, what the government are doing is proper, or they are doing it the right way. And if you notice, the first line of discussion I had with you was around this data capturing. Because whether you like it or not, there are artisans in their large numbers who earn more than 1.5 million per annum. But are we able to capture them rightly so that they can be reflected in this reform? So that would be a challenge in the North. And the North can use such situation to protect the interests of their people or bargain. That is also something we must look at from the South. Despite the fact that we need to address this issue so that at the end of the day, we are looking at fairness and equity. So that should be at the forefront, and unity as we stand.
Okay, so finally, before we move away from the tax reform conversation, I want to ask, among other things, there is an agitation that the speed with which the federal government, there's an agitation that the federal government is mounting pressure on the National House of Assembly to pass this bill into law. The speed with which it is being processed, it has passed the second reading already in the Senate. Do you think there's an undertone as to why the federal government is so much in a hurry to enact this bill?
From economic standpoint, the government needs revenue increase because of its expenditure. They need money to run the government of the day. And money presently is a challenge, both in the public and in the private. Yes, if they are looking at what will come out of the tax reform, if it's something that will address most of their revenue challenges and needs, they will be in a hurry to let it fly. But at this point in time in the political dispensation of our history, I don't see the need to be in a hurry when you are taking decisions. What I believe in that we should make sure that due diligence is put in place first before any policy is implemented or passed through the various stages to become a policy. So why the pressure? Why in a hurry? There are so many reasons. Some are fundamental reasons. Some can be party-oriented or government of the day reasons. But at the end of the day, it's not about having a tax reform that matters. It's making sure that all what needs to be done are put in place. And when you implement, the reform will be successful. You must answer all the questions, all the clauses. You must look at everything. Is intelligence and get it in a hurry and complicate things. So I just hope those of them in power look at things in a more objective manner and be patient to have the right things in place before pushing for implementation.
Okay, for time's sake, this is where we will end the conversation segment on ATN Business. Thank you so much, Mr. Persing. It's always a delight to have you
Thank
on the
you.
show. I look forward to more discussions with you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's a pleasure.
Okay, we'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the stock markets. Don't go anywhere.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
You human traffickers.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Both market participants are cautiously optimistic, keeping an eye on inflation, current fluctuations, and broader economic factors would influence stock performance going into December. As of now, the approximately exchange rate of the Nigerian naira against other currencies, the US dollar, 1,658 to 1,708 naira per dollar. For the pounds, we have 2,127 naira to a pound. For euro, we have 1,802 naira per euro. For the Canadian dollar, we have 1,003 naira per Canadian dollar. Chinese yuan, we have 227 naira. These values may vary slightly depending on the source and whether it's the official black market rate. U.S. stock futures, where Prime Minister Michael Barnier's minority government faces two non-confidence motions in the National Assembly. The motions, brought by the left-wing New Popular Front party, follow Barnier's controversial use of special constitutional powers on Monday to push through a budget bill without a parliamentary vote. Both motions are expected to be debated today, with a vote anticipated this evening. The National Rally has confirmed its support for the left-wing motion while backing its own as well, making it highly likely that the vote. Elsewhere, markets are watching for key economic updates, including European data and the OECD's latest economic outlook. In the Asian-Pacific region, political instability in South Korea has captured investors' attention after President Yoon Suk Yeol imposed and then rescinded martial laws within hours, sparking a sharp drop in South Korean markets. Opposition lawmakers are preparing to oppose an impeachment bill against Yoon, with the possibility of a vote within 72. Meanwhile, Yoon's senior aides, including his